guys. Welcome back to the Pause Reviews podcast, the podcast where a movie guy and a theater guy tell you what's worth watching on all your various streaming services. As always, I'm your host, Frank, joined by my trusty co-host, Tim.
Yeah, I think this week we're going to live up to, the kind of ideals we set for ourselves last week, early in this season, where we're going to lead you through some popular things. And, we promised you that everything in our deep dives would be things that we vetted and we can vouch for and really like. And we take some chances in these rewind episodes. And you might not come away too happy with this one.
Or you will, because maybe we'll help you dodge a few bullets.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I think you said it best in a text earlier where the title of this episode should probably just be meh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These happened to my eye holes.
Yeah. And it's kind of nice. Too. I felt really diligent this week. I was like chewing through these. I mean, to be fair, I do have a little bit more time on my hands still, when I'm not asleep.
What is wrong with me that the first time dad who has an infant child is like, oh, I'm swimming in time, whereas I am struggling. So it's Tuesday. We normally record on the goal is Sunday. It's usually Monday. It's now Tuesday, and it's all my fault because
I mean, not really. I did tell you, I called you last week. I was like, hey, Sunday's a holiday for,
Bro, I wouldn't have had
people.
this done. Like the problem was it was getting through these movies. And issue one was finding the time. So I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show just yet, but the big news is that Alyssa and I just bought our first house.
Yeah.
And so we've got that going on. I mean, we're not moving until later March, maybe April or something like that. But
it'll be here before you know it.
I know, it always is. But between that and kids and work got crazy and all this kind of stuff, the struggle was real this week to even find the time. Because normally when I would sit down to watch the movies in the evening, I was exhausted. So out the gate, I was struggling to find the motivation to sit through a 2-hour movie. And I was skeptical about all of these. Having watched the trailers, especially the two that we chose for this week, it's going to be, those were ones that I just did not have high hopes for out the gate. So finding that motivation was difficult. Finding the time was even more difficult. Finding the energy was difficult. So here we are on a Tuesday. And I say all this because, this house stuff, work stuff, kids stuff, none of this is going to get any better anytime soon. And so I'm just asking that you guys bear with us. We're going to focus all efforts and energy to make sure that we are dropping brand new episodes every Thursday, maintaining our release schedule. And that's going to be like our focus, watching the content and getting stuff together for the episodes. So, this is all basically an apology because Instagram, that kind of stuff has really fallen by the wayside. It's coming back. It's coming back. Ride the wave with us. It's going to just get better and better as we go. But your patience is greatly appreciated.
Life finds a way. Life is still happening through all of this. That's sort of how,
Take it easy there, Dr. Malcolm.
Right. It's like, we're pumping out the podcast, but life is still happening.
It is. So, absolutely true. Unfortunately, this is not my job. This is my art. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
So, all right. So with all that, let's dive in. This is a rewind episode, and I'm super excited because in the last week, we've actually gotten a couple of listener requests. So we're going to do 2 this week and then 2 on our next rewind, plus as many more as we get. Please keep those coming. So this week, we're going to talk about 4 movies. The 2 that we wanted to watch were Locked Down on HBO Max and Malcolm and Marie on Netflix. And I wanted to watch these because they were fully written, filmed, financed, released during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So this is a really unique situation for all of us. It's absolutely a unique situation for filmmaking. I mean, there are movies that are, Mission Impossible is in production. Batman is in and out of production. There are movies that are still trying to do it as close to a traditional way, big blockbuster motion picture type thing as they can get. But these were done totally differently, and I was interested to kind of dive into those and take a look. So we're going to chat a little bit about those and this really bare bones style of filmmaking during these unique times.
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting idea because it's just sort of always been in my mindset that, great art comes out of great adversity, right? Like it's just sort of been a theme that I've experienced or that I'm familiar with. You get a lot of, classic music has come out of, the 60s and the Vietnam War and, the Summer of Love. And then you get into the 70s and the 80s with, punk and, response to the Reagan era. And then the 90s with, late 90s, early 2000s with the Bush era and things like that. But then I think personal experience in college, my junior year, they shut down our theater building and I was a theater major and we were supposed to produce and direct a show as our final thesis. And we don't have a theater now. And they said, found spaces. You are going to direct or produce a show in whatever space that you're allowed to do it in. And so we had to find shows and still do this thesis. And it was like, there's this adversity that we're coming up with. No other class has had to deal with that situation. But can you do it with, a glue stick and a box of croutons, or do you need the millions of dollars to do it? So all of this is super fascinating, whether it's the art perspective of this time producing quality art, music, plays, screenplays, whatever, or just, let's see what we can do. Maybe we can fix broken problems with Hollywood, right? Maybe we don't need all this overproduced stuff. Maybe some good stuff comes out of it. So I thought this was really cool and a really interesting kind of thing to look at with these two movies.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to have this conversation. So I said we've gotten a couple of listener requests, and we're going to tackle two this week. So we got a request to watch the movie Sorry to Bother You, which is available on Hulu, and the movie Guns Akimbo, available on Amazon Prime. So let's jump in to our first movie, which we're going to be talking about, Locked Down. I keep wanting to say Lockdown, which actually was the original title, but it's Locked Down.
Yeah, and I kept searching for Lockdown, and I don't know what's going on with my my Roku, but all of the movie years are wrong when I search on the Roku itself, like search for a movie. So it had this movie as like 1998 and Malcolm and Marie as like 1969. And I was like, what are these remakes? This can't be right. Like, and then when I click through, it takes me to the right movie. So I'm like, yo, Roku, I don't know what's up with you, but this is not right.
Come on, Roku, you're better than this.
It's like, I'm pretty sure Zendaya's a lot younger than like 50, 60 something.
Now she looks fantastic. All right, so Locked Down. This is starring Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor, and a ton of other people make cameos. Mindy Kaling,
Ben Kingsley, Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller. Yep. So it is kind of jam packed with people. This is true of both of these movies, but as I mentioned, they're fully produced, written during the pandemic, and noble efforts, I think, on both parts to try to keep people working. I mean, this industry shut down, and sure, it's easy to think about the Anne Hathaways and the Chiwetel Ejiofor's and the John David Washingtons, and it's easy to think about the 1% who, whatever, right? Tom Hanks ain't feeling the pinch. These people aren't feeling. I mean, they're not having their creative fire stoked, but they're fine, right?
Yes, right.
But there's a lot of gaffers and production crew, camera folk. There are people who really, this is a freelance industry essentially, right? And you're only feeding your family as long as you're working on your next thing. One thing ends and you're on to the next project. And so when this thing hit, man, like so many people, it really affected 98% of the filmmaking community because
Yes.
that's who makes up these production crews.
You take that down to, events industry, theater industry, all that stuff that you see behind the scenes. There are, at least one, if not more people that run all of that stuff. And that's why
Yeah.
everybody sits there and glosses through or shuts off Netflix when the credits hit. But those are all the people that are not working.
Right, right. A lot of people. So huge. Before we get into what we thought about the product, honestly, like enough kudos can't be given to the folks behind these. I mean, especially Malcolm and Marie. I mean, Zendaya like single-handedly almost brought this to fruition. Really working hard to try to get a project off the ground that they could produce safely and keep the people from her Euphoria team working.
Exactly.
Which is really, I mean, it's so commendable. And it's just not something that they needed to do.
Right.
But the fact that they really thought about that, we really got to pay mad credit to that before we tear it apart. So
yeah, it's that grassroots that I was talking about, right? It's like, let's take it back down to bare bones and see what we can do with it. It takes you back to the art that should be at the center of the industry, an industry that a lot of times is lost in CGI and remakes and reboots. People complain there's not a unique idea anymore. Well, now's the time to try some unique ideas.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing else to compete, and we'll almost take anything we can get.
Right.
So why not roll the dice? All right, so Locked Down, as I said, Anne Hathaway plays a character named Linda, and Chiwetel Ejiofor plays a character named Paxton. They are in a relationship, I guess sort of dating, we'll say, long term. I think we find out later in the movie they've been together about 10 years.
Yeah, I think they decide that they, later on they're partners.
Partners is how they, yes, exactly. So they've been together, but now during lockdown, they broke up essentially right before the UK lockdown hit, and they are forced to stay in their house together for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And sort of rehashing all this kind of stuff and living with all this resentment and all that kind of stuff. From this forms a heist movie.
Yeah, I was really actually thought this again was the Roku issue, and in brackets it was like, what did it say? I don't know. I don't think it said romantic comedy, but it definitely had /heist, and I was like, huh? What do you mean heist? So yeah, it takes a little bit of an odd turn.
Yeah. So jumping in, Tim, I guess. Well, first of all, overall, what were your thoughts on this movie? Liked it? Didn't like it? Indifferent?
It ends up being a tale of two movies, right? I think overall the negatives really outweigh anything positive because of that turn it takes. I don't feel like I could find myself recommending this. Is nowhere near a must watch. It's if you're starved and you need something, sure. This is set in the early part of the lockdown, right? This is set in like March of last year, when we were all kind of under that assumption that, hey, 2 weeks, let's buckle down. We'll all be, back to normal by Easter or whatever. It was sort of nice to commiserate, I guess, and maybe I'm a little bit used to that because some of the shows that we watch that are still in production, their seasons started very COVID relevant. So I feel like it's in the zeitgeist already. And it was kind of like, this feels familiar. Right? You feel the tensions of living with a partner. Everybody early on was like, oh, I'm stuck with my partner. Carissa and I never felt that way. We felt really lucky to be with each other. But, you could commiserate with these folks. They were trying to work, and people are getting furloughed, and people are frustrated, and they can't leave their houses. And, so early on, you're like, okay, I can relate to these people. This is very relatable. But when this turns and they suddenly come into this opportunity to steal a diamond, and they steal it, and it just works out, and there's no questions asked, and nothing changes. They're just kind of right back where they are at the beginning of the movie, but now they have $2 million, $3 million at their disposal that they can't use. It just, all the wheels fell off completely at the end of this movie. and just ruined whatever sort of good momentum was starting at the beginning.
I think you're being much kinder than I think I planned to be. I really, really struggled with this one. I'll save. There's a little sugar. I'll save it till the end, maybe, just to sort of end on a high note. I hate being super negative, and it's so easy to criticize the things you don't do right. I mean, again, they managed to make a film, and that's a huge achievement.
In 18 days,
right?
They strung this together.
But you feel that. You feel that it was 18 days. Like, there weren't enough rewrites. There wasn't enough time paid to this. And so to kind of, outline my feelings, number one, so strike one for me, was the pandemic storyline. I'm not trying to make a blanket statement that I'm opposed to, referencing what we're all going through in content. Yeah. But that is not why I'm sitting down to watch a movie right now, right?
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Do I need a pandemic movie set so literally in the pandemic, watching people stuck in their house, not being able to struggling to get to the grocery store, 6 feet apart, all of this, hugely important, right? Empty roads, massive isolation, solitude, Zoom meetings, talking to people online, right? This is my living nightmare, right? For the past year, this has been my life. I am tuning into your movie, desperate and hungry for anything. Honestly, I was kind of looking forward to this one because I was like, a fun heist movie, but great. Give me something to take me away from this living hell. And when the credits end, right, and the movie starts, it's like watching my actual life. It was a nightmare. It was like an Inception-fueled nightmare within a nightmare that is just going to feed my nighttime nightmares. Like, this was awful.
I would like to think that you would be better at a heist than they were in this movie, though.
I mean, we can talk about some of the specifics. Look, if a heist is this easy, I'm certain I can do it. Right. Certain. I've never been more certain of anything in my entire life. But yeah, I think that's a huge miss for me. Watching a movie right now that is so literally pointing to my everyday life was not appealing. That was not appealing to me at all. Take me away. Make me laugh. Show me something else. Remind me of life before this. Give me hope for life after this. Don't just sit me in the here and now, because the here and now sucks,
Right.
And so out the gate, I was turned off, and it immediately tainted and soured my view of this movie.
Sure. And if you weren't at least, okay with the first half of this movie, the second half does nothing to redeem any of it.
No.
Because again, that's what I said. That's when it all falls apart, and you're just totally unrealistic, unrelatable nothingness. That's just frustrating. But to the heist, right? Because I think lockdown be damned at this point. They get this opportunity, and Hathaway's Linda works for this multinational conglomerate that does merchandising.
No idea.
And events, because she fired the events crew. Right. Who knows? And, it sounds like she's in London, but it's not necessarily a permanent assignment.
Well, she's the CEO of the UK office.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And she's been given the option to go back to New York at some point because, they want her there, but also maybe her boss has a thing for her somewhat.
Just real quick, a quick note, because you've hit a couple of points, essentially dead ends.
Yeah.
And that is throughout this movie. And a massive criticism is there are so many things that either come out of nowhere or lead to nowhere. This opium, like these poppies that are growing in their yards, he uses them to go to sleep one night and basically tells us that he broke his 10 years of sobriety. But again, they serve no purpose. He doesn't use the opium to drug, some security guard somewhere, or like it never comes back into play. And then you mentioned this, this big boss, right? There's a guy in Paris or Germany or whatever who runs the entire conglomerate, and it comes out of nowhere that he wants to bang Anne Hathaway and is putting her up for promotions and stuff but there's just no real setup for that. So you just keep finding yourself stumbling on random plot points that then just get ignored or glossed over or whatever. So anyways, it's a huge negative.
Yeah, and not even to mention, it took me a long time to figure out their relationship. Right?
Yeah, close some loops. Like, take us on a journey with a genuine destination.
And so you're spending a lot of time trying to figure all this out, and they're presented with this opportunity of this heist where she's like, hey, I got to go down to Harrods because we got to get our valuable merchandise off their floor for this company we represent. And there's a $3 million diamond and a fake diamond. And if I go, we can switch it because you happen to work for the delivery service that was hired to, move this up to the airport.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but like what normal, okay person is just like, makes that leap, right? Without a bigger impetus of just kind of currently being slightly unhappy at their job.
Well, and I think that leads perfectly to my issue, which is, why are these the people that I want to see successfully pull off a heist?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I'm going to root for someone committing a crime, like there better be some sort of Robin Hood mentality there, right? Like there needs to be
an Ocean's 11 element to it.
Yeah,
right?
There needs to be an even greater good that makes me totally turn on every moral fiber that I have in my being and say that the ends justifies the means.
Right.
Because that is counter to everything inside of me. So you need to convince me to shut that off and follow you on this journey. And the pitch that you make is this affluent woman who is the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate whose partner, I mean, sure, he's having it a little bit tougher.
Sure.
But is a fully paid guy during this pandemic, and his only real struggles and conflicts are of his own making and his own criminal choices. And he's struggling to further himself in his career, in his professional life in general. He's a courier essentially, and he handles like low priority stuff because he can't get a security clearance because he beat someone to within an inch of his life while he was an heroin addicted like biker gang guy. Right. And so this is what you want me to buy into, right?
But he's so dry. He's so dry.
And so I really, really struggled with that. Meanwhile, I mean, yes, there's like a throwaway comment. Yeah, so the diamond, as you mentioned, is worth $3 million. The plan is to steal it and sell it. First of all, you're going to get the full value of the diamond on the black market. Like it's worth $3 million, and that's not how that works.
And somebody who is definitely going to buy it from you. And
sure. I mean, I guess he addresses that. He's like, when I was a crappy dude, like I knew crappy people, and I still know this guy. He's still doing awful things. He'll totally buy it. So, but whatever. Fine. Let's just accept all that. So they do a throwaway comment that they're going to give a third, $1 million to NHS, and then $1 million for each of them.
Yeah.
But you just fired like 8 people. You watched a guy's kid. Like your goal is not to steal this and give money to the people who are hurting. You're keeping it for yourself so that you can quit your $1 billion job and paint? Like this is what I'm supposed to feel for? It is so rough. It is so rushed. The pieces don't connect. You leading, and where does he go? They don't run off with the $3 billion and escape and flee to some non-extradition. No, they're in their They're in their flat. They're in their house.
They couldn't have been easier to find if they had left directions.
Yeah, when someone is like, why didn't Paxton bring back the van? And dude, there's so many problems in this movie. Again, too, $3 million. right? $3 million, of which you're only going to see one. And that's assuming that you're selling it for its full value. Right. They are treating this that like on $1 million, they can quit their jobs, retire forever, and live their dream life in London, right? London might as well be DC, LA. Like, it's not cheap to live there. Right. So you're going to live in London on $1 million. That's gone. That's gone in a year. Assuming you can eat, what are you going to do with $1 million cash? You can't just take it to the bank. You can't just pay for a house. You can't just pay for stuff with cash. So you're treating this as if like this is your end all be all ticket. And that's just not that much money. Like, why isn't this diamond worth $30 million? You know? So, and then the last thing too is this story between Paxton and Linda. It's so choppy and confusing. Why did you break up? You broke up. Why? Because he stopped being a drug addicted criminal and gave you 10 years of boredom. And so now you want to leave him. And the reason you're into him again is because he's a criminal again. And now you are too. And it's such a mess. It's such an absolute mess from start to finish. I think the saving parts of this are the good intentions of just making the movie at all. I was surprised, actually. I thought the pairing of Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor wasn't going to really sync up, and I was worried about that. But that didn't happen. I actually felt that the chemistry between them felt relatively genuine, right? Bad writing aside, I could buy the fact that they had been partners for 10 years. I felt the divide, and I wanted to see them come together. It wasn't a failing of their acting ability. It was absolutely just a failing of the writing.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right that, you know, in a normal time, you have some rewrites and things that it could have been cinched up a little bit. There's just way too many loose ends all over the place to make it feel any sort of coherent, and that relatability that I was finding in the first half just dissipates and falls apart, and I'm left so confused about just how everything is fine and dandy by the end, and there's no consequences. There's nothing. There's no consequences, and even, you know, the relatability of the pandemic falls away because everybody's bustling around Harrods. It's closing down and they're not wearing masks. And I mean, I guess sort of when I stopped going to work, we weren't really wearing masks as much, but it was just weird. It was just weird.
No, it was. I will say the other saving grace too is that, or the other positive, the production value is reasonable. It feels like a movie, minus having the bulk of the characters appear via Zoom and computer. You know, it's worked in given the setting, obviously. But these people are not on set. But in terms of seeing Linda and Paxton together on screen, it's the production value that you would expect when they're on set at Harrods and all this kind of stuff. It feels like a movie versus maybe what we're going to talk about next, Malcolm and Marie, which feels a little bit more indie and low budget than this did. So, you know, again, just trying to find some gleam on the turd, but you can only polish the turd so much. It's still poop.
I will say, I think from what I was looking at, this one was a little bit more favored amongst the general public than the next one we're going to talk about. Which,
but critically, I think it's different.
Yes,
like
exactly.
This one's in the 40s. Malcolm and Marie's like in the high 50s.
Yeah, so there's a little flip on both of these, and I think Frank and I are going to come down on the side of the critics for the most part with these.
Well, I think with this one, like you said at the top, the bad just isn't. It's just too much. It's too much to overcome by the very little bit of good. And so I put this firmly in the do not watch, skip it. It's just not worth the time. Like, not even for a fun bad movie. It's not even a fun bad movie. It's just a bad movie. And it makes you feel like crap because it's like watching your life.
Yeah.
Minus the heist.
Right. Ultimately, this is one of those movies where I think they got to 40 pages of script in and realized that they were running out of time to establish anything, and just threw things together as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So moving on to the next one, Malcolm and Marie on Netflix, starring Zendaya and John David Washington. And it just premiered like a week or so ago. Same kudos, right? Yeah. As we talked about, written, produced, directed, everything shot, released, financed, all during the pandemic. But this one takes a totally different stand and doesn't depict it in a COVID world.
Yeah.
But is a totally, it's just a standalone movie, which especially after watching Locked Down, it immediately raises it in my book because it at least took me out of my world.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I was actually thinking both of these were going to be COVID related, subject wise. So I was surprised when this wasn't. But yeah, how much of that can you really do you really want to get into? One was fine. Two would have been way too much.
Well, and in comparison, so it was originally reported that Lockdown was filmed on like a $10 million budget, but I think they came out and said it was much closer to $30 million.
Yeah, I think they said the budget started with a 3.
Yeah. So now, but this one, Malcolm and Marie, was shot for $2.5 million.
Yeah.
So definitely way more indie feel to it. The IMDb sort of synopsis is: a filmmaker on the brink of Hollywood glory and his girlfriend, whose story made his career, find themselves pushed towards a reckoning as a single tumultuous night decides the fate of their relationship. Dun, dun, dun. So essentially, we come into this story in progress, yes. Right? Malcolm and Marie are returning home from what we find out is his film premiere. It was successful. It was well received. He's feeling pumped and amped. She gets pissed off because he didn't thank her in his, little speech to the crowd.
Yes.
And that continues to rise and fall as the night continues, as new things come to light. We find out more about their past. We find out more about her past, her addictions, her insecurities, her acting career, his failures as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker, as a director, his aggressiveness and abusiveness, and all these things kind of come to light, and the fight evolves and continues on. Yes. I want to say I liked it. It's not a light watch, right?
No.
It's very dark. It's hard to watch, but there is an art behind it.
Yeah, very much so. This to me is a classic living room play. This is a play, right?
Oh, yes.
Like, so much so that I was like, I had to look this up, and I was like, they just wrote this, right? This isn't an adaptation, because this feels like, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where you have these two characters, like you said, you come in the middle of this, and this is all about them. This is not about anything else, right?
Right.
There's nothing else is going to happen. We're in this set. We've got, the bedroom, the living room, the bar, the outside. We're going to move throughout this home, but it's all about coming into their story. And this is only really going to be as strong as the two leads make it, right? That is them holding this together. And when you had texted me and said, I think I'm going to try and get through 2 today so we can do this on Monday. And I was like, don't do it, because it demands attention. So I think because of that, right, I don't think this movie is for everybody. It is art. It is art school, very film school-esque, the black and white kind of leads to that. But this is not your, I'm going to pick this up and watch this on a Tuesday night for fun kind of movie. This is deep, and you have to pay attention to it. And there's a lot of dialogue, and a lot of heavy dialogue, and a lot of quick dialogue.
Yeah, I think, it's funny, the choices that they made when I watched it, and immediately the black and white struck me, but not so much artsy. It struck me because it's cheap. It's cheaper to process the film in black and white. So out the gate, if you're going to do it on film to get that artsier feel, doing it in black and white saves you a crap ton of money. But it also elevates sort of the tone that you're putting out there. That stark contrast also, those really dark blacks and the really bright whites, it really like mirrors the stark contrast between the characters in this movie. It elevates the fight. It feels abrasive. It feels stark, right? And so it's an absolutely beautiful choice. Now, in terms of the writing, it does suffer from being such a short turn, being a pandemic film. To me, my biggest criticism is that the whole thing feels very hyperbolic, right? The fight itself, out the gate, it feels real in the sense of like, I could totally see my wife being upset by something like this. I think I'm a decent person. I would apologize. Malcolm is a total ass. Right? Yeah. From jump. He is so aggressive. And we kind of learn that about him. But she has her falls too. I think that what I mean by hyperbolic is just that like it escalates so rapidly, so quickly, and so extremely. Right? These are massive, massive things that they're throwing at each other, haymakers. And it just doesn't feel entirely real. What it felt like to me more than anything, it felt like a kid. It felt like a 19-year-old wrote his first play, and this is what a 19-year-old thinks like a grown adult couple would fight about, and like what a bad fight would be. It's like, oh, you're a whore, oh, you're a druggie, and that's just not the reality. It kind of reminds me actually of Twilight. I know that sounds ridiculous, but hear me out.
Okay.
But it's when you find out that Twilight was written by a grown woman, I don't know, I was shocked because watching it felt like this was written by like a 15-year-old girl, and this is what she thinks love is, right? Yeah, this is what she thinks adult love is. So finding out that it was written by an adult woman, you're just like, what is happening? And that's the same here, right? To find out that Levinson wrote it is just kind of like, but people don't fight like this. Like these aren't real things. So anyways, that would be my only criticism, I think. But I agree with you because of that. This is not something for all. And I think the people who don't, this is one of those things that you either, I wouldn't even go so far as to say love, but you appreciate and respect the art that went into it, or you just hate it because it's not enough movie and it's too much. It's character driven, it's dialogue driven, and it's a play. If you can't appreciate theater, you'll never appreciate this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, I struggled a little bit with the real time element, right? I found myself kind of going along with they get home at 1:00 in the morning and the movie runs about an hour and 58, I think. So it's close to 3:00 by the time they call it a night. And the ebbs and flows in the energy, I never felt like it was that late. I wanted to feel a little bit more exasperation at times. They were having it out quite well, but it never really felt like 3:00 in the morning to me, right? They were doing a lot of things that would seem odd to be doing at that time of night. That's a minor criticism. Ultimately, if you can appreciate, like you said, the character driven and the acting, it's definitely a movie for you. But if you want something where a lot of things are going to happen, this is not going to work. There were some absolute brilliant scenes. Zendaya pulls she goes off screen for a little bit. She comes back, picks up a knife, and she starts delivering this monologue where you could be pretty certain she's about to lose it, right? We've established at this point she's, had some mental struggles. She's had drug abuse, and she picks up a knife, and you're kind of like, whoa, this just took a turn. And I got clued in pretty quick. I was like, no. She's trying to prove to him that she could have been in this play, in his movie, right? She's like, this is a movie about me. Why didn't you cast me? I was like, she's reciting the line from the movie. And it was still so chilling, though, because you weren't 100% sure. And when she drops that knife like a mic, and she's like, "Mic drop."
Yep.
You're like,
Told you I was. Oh, nailed it. I mean, dude, she got me. You're so right. There are real highlights in this that if you're watching, the part where she confronts him and point blank is like, can you tell me that this movie wouldn't have been better with me?
Yeah.
And he's like, no. Like when there are certain times where she gets him to admit, or to not admit, but to accept or confront the truth that he knows in the back of his mind, but is being so defensive about because it would mean admitting his own shortcomings and reliance on her. And he does that. It feels visceral and real, and they are genuinely great moments. I am not a massive John David Washington fan. He is spectacular in this. Zendaya, I'm a huge fan of. She brings it in this. There are moments where it feels amateur, lightweight, whatever.
Sure.
But there are moments where these two just elevate their performances to the stratosphere, and you are left like there were times I was left jaw dropped, just absolutely spellbound watching them work on camera.
And I want to give him his due too. I think his big scene comes when he finally realizes the review has been posted for one of the reviewers that kind of came up in their fight. Not somebody that you're clear already. He's made clear he doesn't respect her opinion, right? He's like, she's not going to get it. She's young and she's white, and he's like, she's not going to get it. And she gives it a good review, but nothing that she says the movie is thematically is what he feels is the movie thematically. And he just goes off on it. And Zendaya's like, this is you when you get a good review. I don't want to see, but as an artist, you can relate to that, right? You put your work, your heart and your soul into into a project, and then you put it out there and your control is done, right? You've been like, I've said everything I can say about it. And unless you're going to write a review of your own work, or, a compendium and say, this is what I meant by all this, it's open to interpretation, right? And he just gets so mad, and he's going off, screaming at 2:00 in the morning about how she doesn't get it, even though she gave it a great review and said he is a tour de force and like this is his defining moment. He's miserably upset about how wrong she is about the themes of his movie, and he is just like, you feel yourself not breathing with him as he is just going off on it.
Yes.
Great.
Absolutely breathless scenes. And it's so true, because it doesn't matter. If somebody said 99 glowing things about your work, you are going to fixate on the one criticism. And it is a very accurate portrayal of a creative mind dealing with external critiques of his work, especially people who he doesn't deem as in his field, right? It would be different if his peer was doing it, maybe. But again, it's masterful. It really is masterful, but certainly something that if you can't appreciate theater, and this very much feels like someone recorded a play, and here we are.
You could easily adapt this and see it on a stage, and that's,
with ease.
Again, for me, I can appreciate it, and I can find things to appreciate about it. Overall, I mean, I think all things considered, it's good. Is it a must watch? No. Again, because it's a certain type of person. It's a certain type of thing. I mean, if we are hurting and you are struggling to find something, definitely watch this over Locked Down for sure. This is probably the second, out of the four things that we're going to talk about, one of the two that I would recommend if you want to watch something. Go ahead and watch it, but it's not a Saturday night at the movies. This is something to chew on. This is not light fare.
No, agreed. And I think that if you are into stuff like this, you're better off watching something truly done by a master. And watch Fences. Right? Mm-hmm. Watch Denzel Washington and Viola Davis in the film adaptation of August Wilson's Fences, and you're going to see a masterclass of playwriting adapted to the screen that is going to give you drama and relationship just conflict you can't imagine, and it's just thought out and well developed, and it's going to make you feel awful and crappy at the end. Whereas, this feels like a poor man's Fences. This feels like a rush job, a modern day, a millennial's take on something like that. Just very little thought given. I think because that, it's, I agree with you. It's like, is it a must watch? No. Are you hungry for something new and you're interested? Maybe you just want to support the effort that was made to employ these teams. Yep. Absolutely. Give it a watch. Yep. Let Netflix, invest in things like this in the future.
Yep.
Is it worth your time? Sure. Is it going to rock your world and make you see everything differently? Probably not. Nope. But again, I would avoid it if that kind of stuff is just not your bag. Like if theater and these dramatic relationship dives, watch something else. Just watch an old favorite.
Yep. If you can't stand to watch people argue, don't watch this movie.
Yep. All right. So that's it for what we're watching now. Let's touch on 2 requests that we got from our listeners. The first one is Sorry to Bother You, available now on Hulu. And this one was requested by my good friend, James.
Mm-hmm.
So, James, thanks for the request. Sorry to Bother You stars Lakeith Stanfield and Tessa Thompson. Stephen Yeun is in it. Armie Hammer is in it. Yep. Terry Crews, Danny Glover each make quick appearances, which is fun.
Yeah.
So the IMDb plot summary is, in an alternate present-day version of Oakland, telemarketer Cassius Green discovers a magical key to professional success, propelling him into a universe of greed. I struggled with this one, Tim. It's billed as a dark comedy. It's very on the nose, right? He's a telemarketer. He has to use a white voice in order to make any sales. Danny Glover's the one who kind of points him in that direction. And it's sort of this view of capitalism and how we have to, essentially white ourselves to get people to trust us or to buy things from us or to see us as relatable. I mean, I say us, I'm not black, but I am a person of color.
Anybody who's grown up slightly, my dad's always had an issue with some of the things that I have earrings or I've had a mohawk, and it's always been like, you're taking those earrings out when you go to that interview, stuff like that.
Your tattoos aren't going to show, are they?
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Same.
All of that. It's very, very relatable in terms of that. So not necessarily, a minority thing. That's the angle that we're going at with it, within this movie.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that's a solid point. But I guess my issue with the movie was I felt like the story was one worth telling. Yeah. I felt that the way they went about it was just way too over the top. I didn't really find it funny or satirical. It felt over the top just for the sake of it, right? With no real, and then it takes these turns. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but the movie suddenly becomes a creature feature, and it just doesn't even really make sense. It is so outlandish and garish just because. It was almost like, let's just see how much we can throw at these people and how long they'll stick around, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really further the message. It doesn't really further their points.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you and I talked about it before, I think you can find other movies with some of the same social commentary that are just done better, whether that's Get Out or...
Jordan Peele stuff. Yep.
Yeah. This one just made me feel uncomfortable. And I can get it. I think, if you're listening to this, you're probably, well, it's the idea. But I'm not talking about the themes, right? Because the themes they're obvious. And we've had a year of reckoning with this for people who are, more sheltered than us, maybe. But we have friends who have struggled with these themes, and we've struggled with these themes ourselves in some, some way. So none of this is new to me, but it's the just a lot of the actual cinema elements of this movie were just uncomfortable for me, and I just never settled into it. There's a color palette to it that's weird. this idea of, this slightly alternate universe, but it was slightly too weird of an alternate universe, but I can't really pinpoint.
But also too real. It doesn't fully feel like an alternate universe. It just
right.
feels like a wrong this universe.
Right. Like, just something is one screw turn to the left too far, right? Like, but
yes.
Again, like I said, I can't put my finger on it. Add to that, like, some of the overdubs, when they use this white voice, like, I just didn't, the overdubs bothered me. I felt like all the other sound dropped out, and it just, when voices are slightly off sync at all, HBO Max has this problem a lot of the times when I'm watching it. Shows will get unsynced. I have to start them. I have to close out and go back in.
Yeah.
It just felt weird, especially, since we've been doing this and you've encouraged me to, like, don't do the dubs, read the subtitle. It took me out of it every time they used the white voice. And I was just like, I get it, but I don't like it. It just feels weird. Like, production wise, it feels weird. And then, like you said, you moving that into this body horror, all of a sudden this movie flips halfway through. It was just strange. And I really went into this thinking hidden gem, right? I've seen the title, listed. It looks like something I'd watch, and I'm like, when you recommend it, I was like, oh yeah, I've been kind of meaning to check that out. I bet this is going to be something I fall in love with. I'll probably want to watch it again. It's going to be, one of those things that why didn't I watch this sooner? I struggled to pick it back up. I watched most of it, had a half hour left when I had to go do something else. And I was like, I got to watch it again.
This one took me a while to get through. I think 2 days. 2 days, yeah.
And then add in the fact that you got to watch Armie Hammer in a villain role. It's just a whole new thing if you've been keeping up with the news about him. I just missed for me completely. It really did.
No, I think that's exactly it. More than anything, like you said, it feels outlandish with no real purpose. It's abrasive. It's hard to watch, which makes it hard to follow. You just sort of get lost in it's muddy. It's just muddy. It's complicated. It just doesn't make sense. And I just never found an in. I never found a foothold that would just sort of keep me invested. In fact, when I took a break, I had a really hard time hitting play again. I just wanted to move on from it. Which is a shame because I think it's a story worth telling. I just think it was told poorly. And that's just not my jam. But it has, dude, it's like a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. So we're definitely in the minority. But I feel like the fact that we agree, I don't know. I feel like there's more people than you think.
And this is what I was saying earlier. This is the first one I watched. I kind of ran through all the descriptions with Carissa and I was like, hey, which ones of these do you want to watch in the evening? Which one should I make time for on my own? And she was like, that sounds terrible. So I watched this one first and I texted you immediately after. I was like, this was wild, completely wild. And I was nervous. I was like, I hope, like, am I going to be wrong about this? Cause I saw those reviews and those scores and I was like, I must be lost. Like, something must be lost on me. I just did not like it.
Yeah, me neither, man. Me neither. It's a real struggle to follow and to stay with. I wouldn't recommend it, but I'll say that with a caveat because like 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, we're in the minority. So maybe this is one. Watch it and see what you think. This is certainly a conversation starter, but if you're asking me and align with me on most things, I wouldn't recommend it. I just wouldn't.
I mean, like I said, we are, curating you through what to watch and what not to watch. If you haven't, and maybe we're steering you wrong on this one. I think we're humble enough to admit it. It just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work. So let us know. Like, if you watch it and you think we are, nuts, I would love to know where I missed the mark on this. Not that I'm going to watch it again and find out.
No,
I'll take your word for it.
I'm all set. So, Sorry to Bother You, requested by James, available now on Hulu. Our last listener request came from your buddy Eric, who previously requested that we watch True Romance.
Yeah.
And his was Guns Akimbo, which is available now on Amazon Prime Video. It stars Daniel Radcliffe and Samara Weaving. Samara Weaving plays a character named Nix. Daniel Radcliffe plays a character named Miles. And the general gist is Miles is trolling people on the internet. There's this thing called Schism that exists, which is where it's kind of like bum fights to the extreme. Remember when bum fights was a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like they pay criminals to fight each other to the death, and people can watch that online. So Miles is trolling them, and they break into his house, knock him out, and bolt 2 guns to his hands, and he's forced to fight the best, killer in Schism, which is Samara Weaving as Nix. So this one, what were your thoughts? We'll keep this one brief.
So it's interesting, right? So we did the 2, sort of pseudo-related quarantine movies. This and Sorry to Bother You sort of kind of have kind of feel like they fit together a little bit, right?
In terms of like the manic kind of approach?
Yeah. Alternate, slightly off-kilter universe. You have to stick with this one. And that's what I told you. I was like, stick with it a little bit. The first third, it was just kind of like, am I really watching this? And Carissa watched this one with me, to her credit. I didn't think she'd want to. But until Daniel Radcliffe wakes up with those guns bolted to his hands, I would have bailed. Once that happens and he's trying to figure the situation out and the action starts, it's more fun. Before that, it was weird. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. I haven't seen him in anything else except things where he has been his normal British self. And so I was really thrown off by him in an American accent. Not that it was bad.
Dude, his accent was stellar.
Like, it's amazing.
In the voiceover, I didn't even know it was him.
Right? But it's weird. It's just my brain couldn't comprehend it. So I think had I been watching this on my own, I might have bailed. But by the end, I actually really had fun. I didn't find myself being too critically engaged because there's not much to it, right? It's very surfacey. There's some fun cameos. I always love to see Rhys Darby and things. I think he is hilarious.
God, he's so good in this too.
He's so good. I love he has a podcast that is about cryptid creatures, so Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, and aliens and things. And he is just hilarious to listen to him riff in and of himself. So I love that he showed up in this, and his character was great. Daniel Radcliffe trying to get dressed with guns stuck to his hand, trying to navigate everyday life. The battles were great. I've said to you offline that Samara Weaving needs to find some other movies where she's not getting just the crap kicked out of her and
so
destroyed. She must love gore prosthetics because she is just covered in it again. I'm glad I stuck with it. I really had fun in the end. But again, if you're not into this type of movie, it's a gamer type movie. If that's not your thing, it's pretty graphic to a degree and fairly predictable. We pull some kind of tropey stuff with some deals happening off screen that we aren't privy to until after we're needed to know that stuff, and some storylines that don't really go anywhere. About Schism and Nix's background and her dad being a cop, and that doesn't really pay off. And in the end, nothing really happens. And in the end, this actually sort of ends up being a superhero movie, right? So Miles ends up kind of being this vigilante that with a hell bent to shut down Schism. So if you were to tell me a second one was coming out, I actually would believe you because it's sort of set up that way. So I mean, it's fun if you're looking for something different, something energy, completely opposite of Malcolm and Marie. Go ahead and watch it. This would be the other one that I would recommend if you want to watch something and have some fun with it. Not a must watch, but fun to watch.
I think you nailed it. I have absolutely nothing to add. I think it is, I mean, it's exactly, it is as advertised, right? When I watched it, I was kind of in from the start. There's sort of this, it's an easy watch. It is very surface level. There's not much to it as advertised, right? This guy starts some trouble. He's brought into this world, guns bolted to his hands. He has to kill people. Gets guns off hands, and that's essentially the gist. It's very much in line with the movie Gamer with Gerard Butler or Death Race with Jason Statham, where it is a video game of a movie. And that's just it. It's a beat 'em up, shoot 'em up with absolutely zero substance, absolutely zero storyline, any real meat or value added. This is marshmallows. This is Milky Ways. It's gonna satisfy your sweet tooth if what your sweet tooth is craving is things blowing up and people getting shot and whatever else. It's gonna give you absolutely no nutritional value. It is empty calories, and on a cold winter day, sometimes that just feels good. So if that's what you're into, if that's what you're looking for, if that's what you're craving, you want to sit down and you want to watch something kind of gory, kind of gross, abrasive in the sense that it is just manic. Color palettes, similar to Sorry to Bother You, just these very bright brights against these stark darks, and just, it is what it is, man. And if that's what your body's craving right now, if that's what's going to take your mind off of everything else, then this is the movie for you today. I would say, I do recommend it if that's what you're into. It's certainly what I'm into from time to time. I wasn't mad that I watched it. Available on Amazon Prime. No harm, no foul. Unlike some of these other ones we watched, once it ended, I was fine. It was fine that I watched it. It gave me nothing. It fed me nothing. You'll forget it as soon as it's over. But it's fun, and Daniel Radcliffe in the role is he's kind of what makes it fun. It's not that he's a revelation or anything, but it's different. He ain't Harry Potter. His accent is stellar. It's funny and witty in a weird way. Watching him trying to get dressed, trying to do data, answer the phone. It reminded me of being in college when, you would tape 40s to your hands and play Edward 40 hands. And you have to drink them before you had to pee, or else you're going to piss your pants or someone's got to hold your dong. So it's like, so these are just all the things that, the scene with Rice Darby where he's just like, you want me to wipe your ass too? And he's just like, that would be a big help. And he's like, stop, there's really great moments. And it delivers the notes it promises, no more, no less. A must watch? Absolutely not. If you're looking for something and you haven't seen this one, give it a shot. It's a chuckle. If nothing else, it's fun. It's a fun watch.
I think we've covered that one perfectly.
Yeah. That wraps us up. Quick rundown again. We did Locked Down. Tim, do you recommend the watch?
You can pass on Lockdown.
Yep, I'm going to say no on that one too. That one's an HBO Max original. We watched Malcolm and Marie. Tim?
If you're in the mood and you know what you want to watch and you're into things like this, do it.
Yep, you like theater, you like plays, this is the one for you. We had listener requests, Sorry to Bother You, available on Hulu. Tim?
Me? Absolutely not. But apparently 93% of other people say so prove us wrong.
This one's hard. I agree with you. I am definitely in the minority on this one. I feel somewhat vindicated because we agree. But I would say no to this one. But if you feel strongly the other way, this is definitely... This is one of those movies that exemplifies why we have this podcast. I want to hear from you. Like, let's have that dialogue. Tell me what we're missing. Tell me what we're not getting. Convince me that I should love this movie because I hate it. And then the last one we talked about was Guns Akimbo. We just talked about it now. We both recommend this one, available on Amazon Prime Video. And I'll post up images of these and whether or not we recommend them and where you can find them on Instagram later on today. So other than that, next week is a deep dive. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to watch just yet. So let me kind of figure that out. I have I'm sort of weighing one or two things. Let me narrow that down to just one, and then we'll post on Instagram. We'll do like a Instagram live and some kind of an image or something to let you guys know what we're going to be watching, so you can watch it ahead of time if that's what you dig, or just know what we're going to talk about. Other than that, as always, you can find us on Instagram at Paused Reviews. You can check us out online, www.pausedreviews.com, and that has links to everywhere that you can find the podcast, which is on the Podbean app or literally any other directory, including YouTube. And what else? Yeah, you can hit us up on email at pausereviews@gmail.com. And that's about it, guys. So stay tuned for what we're doing next week. I'll have that out in the next day or two. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for listening, hanging in there with us. We were really excited to touch on some of these listener requests, and we hated lockdown so much. We really had to spend some time on it. But I am your host, Frank.
This is Tim.
And we will catch you guys next week. Until then, find something good to watch and let us know what it was. We want to watch it too.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
Peace.